All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Samurai Brothers and Matthew. We are on episode 65 of the podcast. And today, things have been kind of calming down in sumo. And since we were talking about a lot about sumo the last episode, we weren't able to get into the new chapter of One Piece. So today is a two-chapter special, chapters 1167 and 1168, and there's been a lot of stuff happening, a lot of new, I guess, lore in place, and a lot of things that explains why things are the way they are right now, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, but one other thing you forgot to mention the fact that last week when the new chapter did come out, it was Thanksgiving weekend. We had a lot going on. So it wasn't that we skipped anything, we just didn't. There wasn't One Piece content, and there also wasn't and we were busy when the One Piece content did come out.
Yep. So anyway, so let's get right into it. The 1167. Um so into the now, to kick off where we were at 1166, God Valley had concluded, basically. And then we see that Harold has decided to devote himself to atoning for the past sins of Elbaf. And because he really wants Elbaf to be a part of the world government. So he has decided to atone for what happened previously. So we go to 5 years after the timeline in the chapter 1167. 5 years after God Valley, Morgan's is getting reports from some pirates that, or at least some people, townspeople, about a mysterious, enormous figure appearing in the mist, taking out pirates. And also, these types of stories are also happening in Impel Down, among other places. But in reality, it turns out to be Herald who are taking out pirates.
Who is?
Yes, who is taking out pirates. We then see, though, that obviously the three previous emperors, Kaido, Newgate, and Linlin, are consolidating and growing their powers. We kind of see Linlin, her face is starting to form into how we were starting to see her as she was in the current timeline. But then we also see people like Wang Zi and Golden Lion Shiki also trying to do stuff. And again, Wang Zi was basically, once all the Rocks pirates left Full of Lead, that he is the one who's taken over that particular island. Now, and then they also kind of go into that one crew achieved the seemingly impossible. And this is obviously a reference to Gold Roger, because we do see a picture of all the crew members happily celebrating. And so they're talking about how the crew led by the king of the pirates, Gold Roger, he was captured later and publicly executed. The world government assumed it would serve as a demonstration of their strength. However, the allure of his massive fortune, the One Piece, sent the world into an era of frenzied madness. So then they go into narrating about how, in order to counteract the great era of piracy, that they started recruiting also giants from various places from across the world to try to beef up their rankings and stuff. And then we go into Marie Joie, and now he has unusually been granted an audience with the Gorose, the five elders, because of the work that he's put in taking out other pirate crews. And so we then will start going into this, but your thoughts about how he's been, because the five elders are not ones to, meet with people in the lower parts of the world, right?
Yeah, they normally aren't in the habit of granting audiences with anyone aside from a Marine or formerly the Shibukai,
Right,
aka the warlords.
right.
They're normally
So
not one to grant audiences with people like that.
yeah, but so then what they go into is that they are saying that he is a trusted weapon of the Holy Knights of God, called a devoted blade. Now, obviously, Harold is looks like he's really happy to be granted that title. And so they go into how, and so this kind of gives us some insight as to how the Knights of God work, which is that there is a covenant that they enter into. So there's 3 stages to the covenant. The first one where what's his name, Harold, gets to be is in the Shallows covenant. It's a mere trace of a bond, they say. But then there's the Depths covenant and the Abyssal covenant, and those are reserved for only 13 individuals who enter into a contract with the true God. Um, and so obviously this kind of makes Harold question as to what is the God that they speak of. So then the elders say that if the day should come that you're made a proper knight, you will know the truth in the depths of the world. And obviously his response to that is, again, he's only thinking about Elbaf, and he wants Elbaf to be allowed to join the world government. Thoughts on that?
So yeah, so basically it sounds like devoted blades are basically the equivalent of in organizations that require admission pledges. So this is something we see in gangs, but it's also something we see in fraternal organizations, not just college fraternities, but also like the Masons or the Elks or I don't know if it's the Elks. Basically, this is something that you see where it's like you're pledging. You have to prove your loyalty to the group, the organization. So it sounds like you're as a devoted knight, you're a pledge, and then you're making your way into the God Knights. And something that they did bring up is the fact that there's a specific number. There's 13. So
Well,
I don't know what
that's for the
I
Depths
don't.
covenant and Abyssal covenant people.
Yeah, so it's a question of what exactly would warrant someone not, especially because they claim it's immortality, but you and I had talked about how this might be something to do with the what's it called, the what's the lost fruit again?
The Ope no Mi.
Yeah, the opeonomy, the eternal surgery. This does not sound like that. This is
Yeah.
something else. So this, yeah, it sounds like something that maybe the 5 elders aren't opeonomy guys either. But it sounds like I'm wondering if you stop aging at some point. Clearly, you age as a god knight because we've seen that with not Saint Killingham, right?
Yeah, I mean, um, you talk about Summers or Killingham?
Yeah. Summers, yeah, we've seen Summers age,
Yeah,
but
he yeah, because he looks a little younger in this flashback, and he looks a little older though currently.
yeah. Though, what's her name? Gunko hasn't aged, so
No, no, she hasn't. That is the thing. So hard to tell, but
yeah. Well, and then not
Gunko,
to mention, which one of the Gorose is a guy who looks like he might be in his like 30s or 40s or something like that. The younger looking guy. We don't know if he's younger, but the younger looking guy.
that's Jupiter, I think.
Yeah. So it's I there's clearly a variety of factors that we don't know and quite frankly might not be ever be explained. But
Mm-hmm.
like I said, this looks like something that's a so it's sounding like there's a pledge process, there's like a lower group that you're a part of, and you make your way up to being an actual god knight, one of the 13. But then the question is, how does someone exit if there's like, we're not going to say immortal, let's say invulnerable, or at least no, let's use the word invincibility. There's
Mm-hmm.
clearly a high level of invincibility that you have in terms of, but there's still questions we don't have the answers to, and it's kind of a quick, and clearly also it's not just confined to if Harold is making his way up, and Loki was offered a position as well. So clearly you don't have to be a world noble in order to get into the God Knights. We also saw that because there's that one guy who looks like possibly a fishman, possibly another giant,
Mm-hmm.
who's in
Yes,
the God
you're right.
Knights.
So yes, you're right about that. So to move on then, he's taken to what's called the Shangara, which is the Knights Temple in the land of the gods. So this is probably at Marijoa. Figurlin Garling at this point has become the commander of he's a commander of the Holy Knights, because I think the leader is actually the supreme commander of the Holy Knights.
Yeah, which he will
At that
become.
point.
He's worked
Yeah.
his way up from, what was he in the God Valley flashback?
I think he was at that point, if I remember correctly, he was a knight, but I don't know that he was the commander at that point. So
Yeah, well, he's clearly been making his way up.
right. So that being said, obviously, so he's giving Harold directions on what to do, keep a transponder on him. He says that he's still allowed to go back to the lower world, but he cannot speak of what is happening in the upper world, obviously in the land of Marijoa. So with that being said, then he visits Neptune. So obviously they are on good terms, they're friends and things like that. Now Neptune, obviously, his opinion of Loki isn't as negative as what's perceived from the other uh, people on Elbaf and such. So, but here's the thing, because we see that, and I forget her name, but it was Arlong's sister, has foretold to Neptune that, obviously, Neptune's daughter will be born 4 years from the current timeline, and this is right now we're at
Charlie,
20
Madam
years.
Charlie. Madam
Yeah,
Charlie. Her name's Madam Charlie.
yeah, Madame Charlie. So obviously Neptune's daughter is going to be born 4 years from the where we're at in the current flashback, which is 20 years before the current timeline. So with that being said, so obviously, Neptune obviously talks about that maybe, they can form an alliance, with having Loki. I forget her name. The Neptune's daughter. It's been a long time.
Shirahoshi.
Yeah, Shirahoshi. So they're thinking about maybe they can get Shirahoshi and Loki together. Obviously, we don't know. Obviously, that doesn't happen. After that, so it looks like at this point, obviously Saul has come back. So this is at the point where he is alive, and he's returned to. If I remember correctly, he was not born in Elbaf. But he does go to Elbaf because that's where he is now. It's basically his sanctuary away from the world government and the Marines because of what happened in O'Hara. But Harold has Saul open and manage a school that's there because they do have the Owl Library. That's where we're at on that case. So we do see that Saul at this point, he is around and he's doing lots of stuff. So then when we go to 15 years before the current storyline, we see that Fisher Tiger has made his assault on the Marijois. And that's where he frees the all the slaves and stuff like that.
including the Gorgon sisters.
Yes, including freeing the Gorgon sisters. Now, here's something that we're seeing right now, and this is where things get a little bit interesting because, and this kind of goes in. This will play into something later on. So when we do see that Fisher Tiger, he's facing someone, and someone from the Knights of God is facing him, and I could almost swear that this silhouette looks like what's his name, Shamrock. Obviously not
Yeah, which is
confirmed.
which is interesting because it does look like Shamrock, but it almost looks like the person hits one of what's his name? Fisher Tiger's shackles.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
question: is it Shamrock?
and he tells Fisher Tiger that the armory has been left unlocked. Here's how to get there, which is interesting. And you can almost see, it almost looks like that Fisher Tiger has hit this person in the face also, because you can see a little bit, it's very minimal, but you can see a little bit of blood coming off.
Which is weird because Shanks claimed that he got those scars from what's his name? From
Blackbeard. So
Teach.
yeah, we'll be getting into that shortly later on here. So obviously, so the incident called the ransacking of sacred Marijoa. Because yeah, this is where things get interesting because obviously, so Harold has come back. Obviously, so this is where things get into play here because they're the Knights of God are telling Harold that we're thinking someone from our side might have opened up the armory to them. Obviously, they want the traitor put to death. And Harold is introduced to Shanks because Shanks has been, it looks like he's been allowed to return to the upper world after having been separated from birth from Garling. Interestingly enough. But he's not. Well,
Well,
before.
as I've said before, it seems like here's the rule with regards to that.
Mhm.
Shanks never formally rescinded his world noble heritage.
Right, because
And neither did Garling as his father. Whereas Don Quixote,
Doflamingo.
who was Doflamingo and Rocinante's father? Homing. Don
Homing,
Quixote
yes.
homing actually did, and he did that on behalf of his sons. Whereas Shanks never rescinded his heritage, his heritage, aka his birthright. So it sounds like that's the key. He was separated at birth, but he did not formally rescind his heritage. So even though he'd lived essentially all his life outside of Marijois, it sounds like they're still honoring it, especially because of where um uh Garling's position is in the world government is concerned.
Yeah. So we see that obviously right now he is a part of the Knights of God, although he's only a devoted blade, just like Harold. And Harold's speaking to him a little bit casually, but Shanks is seeming to be like, we are not the same level, and I've had the blood of Figureland in my veins. So then we see that so Shanks and Shamrock are walking side by side, and he has the title of Saint Shanks. So that means that yes, he is confirmed as a world noble in this current part of the storyline. And it's interesting because he's talking about how he wants to find out who was responsible for the attacks, and he makes some interesting remarks about um, how when he's talking to Shamrock, you don't know what it feels like to learn that you've wasted 24 years of your life. And I always knew I was different from the others. I hated everything down there. But the way he's talking makes Harold think about what he's actually saying.
Yeah, it's kind of. I'm thinking one of two things happened. Either Shanks had a bad experience, possibly relating to his encounter with or maybe Blackbeard's scars is a cover story to cover from that because he doesn't want that. Well, regardless, he either is going through this radical part of his life or this is a cover.
I still think though that the scars look like, because it's the three lines across the eyes. And we
Right.
know that
And
Teach used, that weapon.
yeah, I forget what they're called, but yeah, he used that three thing weapon. Whereas we know that Fisher Tiger didn't use any kind of an attack like that.
Yeah. So
So
it's kind
it's
of a
leaning
weird,
more toward leaning more towards still more towards Blackbeard.
yeah. But I'm sure we'll find out probably eventually about this. So then we go back to Elbaf and we find that Ida has gotten sick. Obviously, Harold and is away, but also Hilding is away trying to find a cure for Ida's sickness. And then Loki also, because Loki has taken a liking now to Ida, because he's considering her as as his mom. But then we get into what actually, is the tragedy of this chapter, is that he finds out that Brewer's Village, which is where Loki's mother is from,
Astrid.
Astrid, we find out that the townspeople of Brewer's Village poisoned Ida, and apparently that poison is fatal, that she won't recover. And this sends Loki into a flying rage enough that he burns down the entire Brewers village because and he calls them out on this. He says, "I remember what my real mother did. She cast me out of the tree into the underworld. You want fortune? You people make me sick. Ida ain't gonna die, is she? Because she's the only mother I have." So obviously that is we see still that there were those who still hated Ida for the fact that she was a commoner, she wasn't from Elbaf, and that they really these people had a twisted sense of loyalty to the effect that they were willing to commit murder for that.
Yeah, it's clearly Well, I think part of it was because that clearly what's his name? Clearly, Harold was not the king of Elbaf. It sounds like was not an absolute monarch. He worked. It sounds like he worked with um they call them the elders. So it sounds like it was more like a parliamentary constitutional monarch system where the king has power, has a lot of authority, but he's still working with um a group of people within the
Right.
government. So these elders were like, no, you have to do things a certain way. You have to marry a certain, you
Certain
have to marry
person.
certain people, and this is the person that we recommend. So, and he was still trying to, campaign for Ida because Ida is his true love.
Yep.
But the Brewers Village didn't want that to happen, so they were resorting to this almost, it you could almost call it an assassination of Ida.
Yeah.
But either way, Loki, even though this probably wouldn't be what Ida would have wanted, Loki's loyalty was to essentially the woman who basically was his true adoptive mother.
Yep.
It's
So
it's that it's like you said, it was a tragedy because it's like, these people who probably were his relatives, he was just like, you guys killed the only woman who showed me kindness, who showed me the the motherly love that I needed. So
so we
it
actually our timer has started counting down. So we need to move into chapter 1168. And actually, chapter 1168, to kind of fast track it a bit, it does confirm that Ida did die, that the poison did end up taking her out. And we see that Harold is reflecting on that, that, she made him a better person. And it looks like Elbaf, their reputation in the world is starting to really gain traction, such as products that are exported from Elbaf, such as the cedar, a lot of the Elbaf seafood, and just a lot of other things, such as the Giants in the Navy, playing a crucial role in a lot of events going on that involves the Navy. And Harold is, the Walrus School has developed. Saul's been the one that's really been working on it. So he's trying to change the culture of Elbaf, with what's going on. But with that being said, Loki has been put in jail um, because of what he did to Brewers Village. And it looks like from here, Brewers Village did not recover from obviously what damage that Loki did to it. So, and interestingly here, so 14 years ago, in Marejois, they're pointing out Shanks has gone missing. He completed a mission, and he was on track to be made a full-fledged knight. But that means that Harold was the backup, and he's being selected as so it looks like a slot has opened up for one of those 13 slots has opened up. My guess is that it's because and this is just a guess, that Garling gets promoted to Supreme Commander, and I'm wondering if that was one of the slots that opens up. And that's strictly a guess, but now they're allowing Harold to take the further covenant. Thoughts on that?
and that involves meeting
Yeah, that involves, so he's taken to the throne room, because he says that on the day that Elbaf is entered into the world government, he will abdicate the throne and have someone else sit on it. But Emu comes in and says that's something that Emu will decide. And Emu says, "Come closer. I've been watching the Herald," and he is getting he's getting the Abyss. I think this is the Abyss Covenant, from what it looks like, at least from my perspective here. And he's feeling that he's getting immense strength. But Marcus Mars is pointing out that he's now immortal. And then the others are saying that it's chilling of the spine. He's more than a monster now. He's now a weapon. And Emu points out that he will be an undying knight in service to Emu. He'll create an abyss on Elbaf, and he'll be a bond to them. And Harold seems to be happy with that. He says that, and then he's all calling out to his people that Elbaf will become a member of the world government at that point, at some point. However, then we see that there's problems arising now because Harold is being told that Elbaf will become an army of warriors and will build a fleet to rival the Navy. And obviously, Harold is thinking that this was not what the deal
I signed up
was.
for.
Right. And so now, because he's got the covenant, branded on him, Emu is starting to make things happen with Harold. And it's at this point that he realizes the mistake that he made. So now he's calling out to his servants and warriors that are attending to him. He says, "Tie me to this pillar and act quickly. Call Chief Jarul and his sons." So with Loki still in the prison, he says, "Release him." And so obviously with Loki and Jarul being summoned, they're wondering what is it that's going on. So to end out the chapter, and then we'll have you give your final opinions on this. This is the day that there was a terrible massacre inside the castle, and the most beloved ruler in the history of Elbaf, wise King Harold, perished. So obviously we now get to, and I'm thinking that probably maybe one or two more chapters, and we're gonna finally close out this flashback. But Matthew, your final prospects on that before we end today's episode.
Something that I noticed is that once Harold gets the abyssal seal, the style of there's a change in the style of the
Yes, I
and
noticed that
that
too.
never fully goes away. It gets lighter at points, but it never fully goes away. So um I'm thinking that and then another thing, if Harold is slain, and it takes as long as it does for the God Knights to finally offer Loki a position, there's some way clearly to actually kill a God Knight, and probably the reason why Scopper knows about this is because he witnesses Harold get a God Knight being killed, possibly by Loki.
Mm-hmm.
And for wait, doesn't Loki also have Conqueror's Hockey?
Yes, I think he does.
Yeah, so it's possible that he uses that to actually kill his father tragically because and it's another thing we might I don't know if the God Knights can be quite possibly they can be turned into what's it called? They can be dummy reversied. So it's possible that's what happens. And yeah, just out of tragedy, it's gonna be Loki. Well,
Yep.
and we might get a situation similar to what what's his name uh Rock's asking for a mercy kill. It's possible
Yeah.
that Harold will break through long enough to ask Loki to mercy kill him.
So, yep, we'll see. That's definitely so.
We'll find out in 2 weeks.
Yep. So, new chapters in 2 weeks. We will be taking next week off because I will be doing some traveling. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your time and watching today's episode, and we will be seeing you in 2 weeks' time. So, take care.